Okay, we are live. I need to hit live on Instagram real quick. Go live there. Kill that, and back to StreamYard. All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Mathew Mulholland. This is Lee Olivares. And if you guys don't know who Lee is the guy that does a lot of Spanish language training for our industry. In fact, he's doing quite a bit for Building Experts Institute. You are the owner of the Latino Claims Academy.
Yes, sir.
And anything else you want to say about yourself?
Well, I'm also a public adjuster in the state of Texas. I'm licensed as an insurance adjuster in the state of Texas and Florida. Worked a lot of claims as an independent adjuster, and also did a lot of restoration work in the state of Texas. So, yeah.
So what we're going to do here, I've done this a few times just for the fun of it. I got bored. So did Lee. He happened to be with me, and we're like, hey, let's go live and answer whatever questions people have about an insurance claim they're dealing with or problems they're commenting on or whatever issue you might have. Try to stump me. Try to stump Lee. So this time, and for the first time ever for listening to this poll, we could do this in Spanish or in English. So if you have a question, put it in the commentary. And if it's a really good question, I'll even pull you onto the episode by sending you an invite link, and then you can just show up right there. We're also going live on Lee's TikTok page, Latino Claims Academy TikTok page right now. So you can watch us there as well. And if you have questions, you can ask it there. I will keep tabs on some of the platforms that we are going live on. And we're not going to get to see every comment. So if you add a bunch of comments in there and you don't get any response from me, just give it a minute and I'll go back through and check, because we're on freaking LinkedIn. We're on 4 different Facebook pages. We're on my personal Facebook page. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're on all of it, all at once.
Yeah, and we also need to talk about the event we're doing in Chicago.
Yeah, we got to do that too. We're gonna talk about all that little things that we do as it comes up. We're gonna actually go live specifically about the thing in Chicago soon.
Yeah.
But there's questions in the comment. Let's do this. All right. Yeah. So while we're waiting on people to join us, why don't we talk about that? We're Lee and I are actually doing a specific event in Chicago on the 18th. I forget the title of it suddenly.
Well, we got the master. Oh, it's here. Let me pull it up.
Yeah. On your phone?
Yeah.
Go figure.
Let me see. Well, actually, you have it on. Let me put this right here. You have it on WhatsApp. Yeah,
WhatsApp?
go to the WhatsApp and go to the photos here on the WhatsApp page. No, not FaceTime. Just click on here on the title.
I'll let you take control of that thing.
Oh,
media. You can do that.
And let's see. I think it's called Simplify Claims and Win. Is the name of the.
I think we did it via text, Lee. Unless you put it in the.
I put it in the group text.
You put it in your group. Okay.
All
right. If you guys don't ask questions from us about claim issues or things that you are struggling with, then I'm going to start talking about claims for myself and things that I think that are important, which usually aren't as relevant. And you don't want that crap. What you'd rather do is give me some specific bullshit you're dealing with, and then let us figure it out together.
Let's see if anybody.
What kind of bullshit you guys dealing with? You
Dallas,
guys dealing with claims at all?
Dallas, well, the A team. We were in Dallas. What was it? A month and a half ago?
Yeah, something like that. We're going to be in Houston soon, but not that that's really close. But
people in Texas are willing to travel. We'll be in Texas on the 14th. There it is.
There we go. All right. It is called Simplify Claims and Win, a masterclass, also titled in Spanish as
Estimando con éxito, documenta, suplementa y gana.
Basically, we're gonna teach you guys how to simplify your claims process completely, boil it down to what is absolutely necessary in order to make claims move forward and start winning some of this stuff a little bit easier. I just caught this, but my the at Mathew is two T's there.
Gotta get that changed. I'll
Go
fix
figure.
that.
No big deal.
So
if you guys want some tickets, I'll actually post this up on the screen real quick.
So when will we be in Atlanta? You've already done 2 of these in Atlanta, right? 2 of the repairability assessments.
Repairability assessments we've done in Atlanta twice. We've done it in Nashville, Dallas, Orlando. So many.
We're going to be doing one in Denver.
Okay. We're going to Denver. We're going to Houston. We're going to Chicago. Yeah. We're going to do the repairability assessment training in Chicago Maryland. Right after.
Doing Maryland, and
Connecticut.
Missouri. We're going to be doing, what is it?
Window. Where's that thing?
St. Louis, Missouri. Vamos a estar en Atlanta el 26 con SRS. So, si quieres ir al evento ese, comunícate con Dulian de SRS.
Bam. There's the masterclass we were discussing. It's right there on the screen now.
Intento reparabilidad. I want to speak about repairability assessment.
So repairability assessment stuff is put on by the Building Experts Institute. Building Experts Institute, I'm the dean of, and Lee does the Spanish training for some of the things on. But he's taking care of the Spanish-speaking aspect of repairability. But this is a class that teaches you how to utilize the only standardized method for determining if an asphalt shingle roof is or isn't repairable. And that is a methodology written by the National Academy of Forensic Engineers. It's a repair methodology in order to identify just whether or not the asphalt shingles themselves are repairable. The guy that wrote that standard, his name is Chad Williams. He has partnered with the Building Experts Institute to certify individuals in the use of that standard methodology. So at the class, we teach you step by step how to use that methodology exactly as it's written. We give you an exam on the use of that and all the different ways you're supposed to do it. And then you have hands-on training on actually performing those and writing a report. And then after we do the hands-on portion of it, you pass the exam, then you submit a repairability assessment report to Chad, the author of the standard, and he certifies you on whether or not he believes that you have been able to perform your duties as an assessor appropriately utilizing that methodology. Because it is the guy that wrote the thing, it is about the strongest certification that you can get in our industry. There really isn't anything stronger. People that are using this certification in order to determine if a roof is or isn't repairable are overturning claims decisions where they just say, well, no, we disagree. We think it is repairable. You haven't done crap to identify whether it's repairable or not. You're just making some friggin' determination. But now you can get some credentials behind your name and you can actually perform a standardized method and you can prove that it isn't repairable. And then the carrier can't say anything unless they prove otherwise.
And we have that contractor in Louisiana named Jose that's already applied it twice on 2 different roofs, and he's overturned both of them. And that's been 1 a week. So that investment was definitely worth it.
Definitely.
It went from below deductible to, on the first one, 20-some thousand, and the next one, 37,000. So yeah, that thing's already paid for itself several times over.
100%. And that's not the only story. We hear just about everybody that is taking that certification. They're definitely having a lot more success when making repairability arguments. And we give you a standardized format for the reporting. We make it easy. We have a form for you to fill out and all the things that occur during the repairability thing. We go step by step, what tools you should use, what tools you shouldn't use, how to go about using them. It's very hands-on. It's a full day. Everyone feels like it is very worth the money. If you guys are interested in that, you can get tickets and see where we're going to be at and when we're going to be in your area by going to buildingexperts.institute, which I will put a banner up real quick.
Somebody just put a good comment there.
And then it's /events-schedule. And if you go to just buildingexperts.institute, and then click on the events tab. You'll find it as well. But we're going to be in Houston next. I think Houston is on Monday, this coming Monday,
the 14th.
14th, and then we're doing Chicago on the 19th. The 18th is the class that you and I are doing with SRS, right?
That is going to be just us.
That's just us.
Yeah.
Never mind. So the class we're doing is on the 18th in Chicago. Doing a few different private trainings in Houston and Chicago in the meantime while we're there. And then the following week, we've got Denver, Colorado. And you know what? I'm going to have to pull it up myself.
So I used the tool that the insurance company or State Farm wants us to use, right? The roof snake. And man, I tore up that roof. Trying to do the repairs. Wasn't intentional, but it's definitely
it was really great for the class to show people just why this thing is a piece of garbage. All right, so St. Louis, Missouri on the 21st, Denver on the 24th. So we're doing Houston, Texas on the 14th, Chicago, Illinois on the 19th, St. Louis, Missouri on the 21st, Denver on the 24th, and then we skip into August, and we've got Baltimore, Maryland on August 5th, and Hartford, Connecticut on August 7th. That's what's on the schedule as of right now, and you can find it at that link that I just posted. I'll post a link in the comments as well, just to make it really easy for you guys. Bam.
Manuel, follow me, and we'll be updating whenever we have events. Be posting it on here. We are planning on doing something in New Jersey as well, and actually, Building Experts Institute is the only one that is allowed to teach this repairability assessment. Because Chad is only allowing Building Experts to use his document to teach. So I think that's also important for them to know. They're not going to get this quality of training somewhere else. Or RGV. No, Levi, we are in Nashville, Tennessee.
Hi, Brendan. Thanks for the comment. He says, we had a contractor try it. He overturned both claims. This is a problem we are starting to have, Matt. You're doing things so much different now. I'm not really sure what you mean. We've gotten contractors and public adjusters and even attorneys and engineers certified as repairability assessors. The contractors are the ones that are performing the work. The other people are typically just watching the thing happen or directing it and then writing a report on what occurs during it. But yeah, if there is paperwork that is submitted to the policyholder to send in on whether or not it is or isn't repairable, the policyholder sends it in. Now, forgive me for misspeaking and saying that a contractor overturned something. It's colloquial language, guys. Come on. I'm going to say a contractor overturned something when a contractor sends something to the policyholder and it gets overturned as a result because they reported that something is or isn't repairable. And they did the proper job to determine that. I think that's where he's going with this comment. I've had a handful of public adjusters reach out to me and say, and even Steve Badger. Steve Badger is having a hard time with some of the language that I'm using. I'm just speaking about how we talk about things. It's colloquial language. If I'm going to say, hey, oh yeah, no, we won that claim, whether or not you're the one actually working the claim or not, doesn't really matter. Rimkus has presented plenty of times and said that we denied that claim. We did this, we did that. That's an engineering firm hired by carriers. Ladder Assist will say they denied claims. They're not the ones that are adjusting claims. This is just colloquial language, guys. We know what we mean.
The contractor just presenting evidence. He's not representing the homeowner.
No, obviously not. And submitting things to the policyholder to send in or to the public adjuster to send in those cases, or if it's a public adjuster doing it, they send in themselves. But there's plenty of people that are doing this kind of thing. So,
and it feels like
I don't know if that's where you're going with that.
It feels like a win for a contractor by being able to present the information that they're learning, and it's a win for like it feels like a win, right? Because presenting the evidence and the insurance overturning their decision.
Any idea what RGV means?
Yeah, Rio Grande Valley. That's a cousin of mine, Levi Quiros. He's also a public adjuster. He is also an expert in mitigation. So, guy knows a lot when it comes to mitigation.
RGV means what?
Rio Grande Valley. So the
Rio Grande Valley.
Yeah. Okay. So South Texas, 4 hours south of San Antonio, from Not Laredo, further south from Laredo, all the way to Brownsville is known as the Rio Grande Valley. So because we are by the Rio Grande.
I'm getting called out here. This is fun. If you watched your own videos from 2 to 3 years ago compared to now, I think you'd agree there's a major difference since Borelli. I do a lot of things. Probably do too many things, and so my day is taken up with a lot of stuff, so I don't have the opportunity to spend a lot of time making the kind of videos I used to make 2 to 3 years ago. And I have a completely different team. I'm running 3 different companies. But, I do whatever I can. And I go live like this every now and then to answer people's questions. Not really sure where we're going with that, though.
Because of your experience, quick loans for roof cash deals, what are you guys using? So what do you recommend, I guess, for finance?
For financing, I don't have a recommendation on that. I've never done financing that way. When I was a contractor, we didn't do it. But that was so many years ago.
Mm-hmm. So I've heard of people using, I think it's called Leap.
Leap?
Yeah. There's also Service Finance. I think there's several. There's quite a bit.
He's got me all twisted up in my head. I don't know where you're going with this, bro. All right. Anyway, they'll argue semantics rather than arguing the real issues. Keep it up, Matt. Thanks, Cameron. I appreciate it, buddy. Who's got a claim question? I'm about to digress into crap that I've noticed, but it might be better if we just go into something that you guys are struggling with. Would love to help out on something you guys are struggling with right now.
Send it over here.
So, if you've got claim questions, we'd love to answer it. In the meantime, we are going to be in Houston next week and then Chicago. If you guys are interested in doing anything along those lines, you can check that out. One of the big problems that I'm starting to see in the industry, since no one is giving me any kind of questions, I'll just start a topic. Here's a topic: wear and tear and hail. Often you hear that's not wear and tear, or that's not hail damage, that's wear and tear. And for a while I've been teaching that means that the hail damage that is observed, its proximate cause is wear and tear. The carriers were basically identifying the proximate cause of the loss as being related to wear and tear and not to hail. They're not saying that hail wasn't involved. They're saying that if not but for the age of the material, then the hail would not have been sufficient to cause the damage. And therefore, the age started the chain of events off and is therefore the proximate cause, which is a poor interpretation of proximate cause. The intervening cause of the hail event makes a lot more sense. But that's kind of where they were going with things for a while. But there is this idea now where it appears that they are actually saying, no, we're not saying that was the proximate cause. We're saying that is, in fact, wear and tear, because hail damage itself is wear and tear. Have you noticed this kind of a thing?
Yeah, I get
if hail damage is wear and tear. Hey, Mike. So, if hail damage is wear and tear, then that means that hail damages all roofs. It's known to happen. It's expected to happen. You could calculate how much hail damage there would be on a regular basis for every individual roof. Shingle manufacturers account for the amount of granule loss that would occur from the hail events that are going to occur in every single area. That's what that would mean if hail damage is itself wear and tear. That's a problem. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't pass a sniff test, the smell test, otherwise known as a bullshit. Insurance policies cover fortuitous events, meaning things that are unexpected to happen. So if hail damage is expected to happen all the time, everywhere, then you would not have coverage for hail at all. It would be excluded. It's not excluded in the policies at all. So if hail causes any kind of a physical alteration to the property that is detrimental in some way, then that is damage unless the policy defines it otherwise. So there can't be wear and tear from hail because hail is a peril that isn't excluded against for an open peril policy and is a named peril in the named peril policy. So anything that hail causes to the roof can't be considered wear and tear. It is a separate peril. It's not even a condition. It can't be. So it's a ridiculous statement. So that's where some of these engineering firms are starting to drive their language. They're starting to say, instead of saying that it's proximate cause, they're starting to say right now that the hail is in fact wear and tear. It's crazy. It is crazy, Mike Gonzalez. It's ridiculous. And it does create illusory coverage. Thank you, Matt Danskin, partner of mine at the Building Experts Institute. It means that you would never have coverage for hail, even though it's a covered loss, if all hail damage is wear and tear. So unless they have some kind of a limiting factor in the definition of damage in their policy, which most still don't, at least for asphalt shingles, they do for like metal roofs. They do for metal siding a lot of times. And in certain markets where you have so much hail, they might have some kind of a exclusion for cosmetic damage or a limitation on damage only if it's functional or only if it allows entrance of the elements all the way through to the interior of the home at that moment in time. All the kind of crap that lies in the policy language. All of that would definitely be more than wear and tear anyway. But hail doesn't cause wear and tear. It's a crazy thing. So what is the definition of damage? Are you wearing shorts? I was told not to listen to people wearing shorts. There was somebody that said that on LinkedIn. Crazy story. I had an event I was speaking at for ICO, the shingle manufacturer, and they came to our facility in Nashville, which ended up being moved because Disney bought our other building and kicked us out. Disney bought our building. So we had a new facility I hadn't even seen before I got here. And I was at a wedding internationally that I got invited to. And I got some problems getting back. We had a lot of problems getting there on top of it. The whole trip was a nightmare because there were a lot of strikes at airlines in Italy. And then there was also the attacks on Iran. And so there was all kinds of issues going on. And then my flight ended up getting canceled. I was on the plane getting ready to go to Paris and then fly back to the US. And that flight got canceled because of an issue with the airplane. And other flights weren't flying out because of the strikes in Italy. So I ended up finding a way to get to that event as quickly as I could. It started at 9. I was able to land by 9:20 if I flew to Cairo, and then flew to Washington, D.C. from Cairo and then back to Nashville. Got in at 9:20 a.m., hightailed it over to the office, and I could be there by 10, even though I was supposed to start by 9. So we worked out the scheduling to where one of the other speakers spoke. But what I was wearing at that event was a pair of shorts that I had been wearing for more than 24 hours on several different aircraft, and did not have a chance to shower or change or sleep. So I taught that entire class, full sleep deprivation, but I am happy to note that I freaking nailed it. It was awesome. I did good.
So this guy over here
Thanks.
saying that wind cannot crease
The corners of shingles, diagonal creases, prove me wrong. Of course they can. What? Look, shingle manufacturers have a sealant that engages. Some of them are like dashed, and some of them are a solid line. It doesn't matter if it's dash or a solid line, but it happens more often when it's like dash. And the dash means there's like a gap between it where water can get out. On some areas of a shingle, the sealant will be very fully engaged, and in other areas it might not be. And so if wind hits a shingle that is fully engaged on one side and not so much in the other side will start to lift up, and it will cause a crease wherever the shingle bends at the points of resistance, which would be at the nail zone and at the sealant that's still engaged, which would cause a corner crease, obviously. That happens all the time.
Somebody over here is asking thoughts on zippering, wind damage, or workmanship.
Zippering is a terrible word. Zippering occurs on 3-tad roofs that have been installed in the racking method. And if you install things as a racking method or any installation method, the corners of the area at the butt ends of the shingles are loosened because of expansion contraction. It's the sealant gets stretched and reshaped over and over again. So the sealant at those edges on the butt ends of the shingles get worn out faster. So you have loose corners. But if in the racking method, it would be alternating left, right, going all the way up loose corners, which just means loose corners from expansion contraction. But because it's loose like that, then wind can get under it very, very easily and cause a lot of tearing following that racking up, and it ends up looking like a zipper. That's what real zippering is. But what most people identify as zippering in our industry, I have instead coined as sheeting, because it's a shingle that is lifted up, ripped up off the nail, and all the shingles that are still glued to that one come up with it as one big sheet of shingles. And it can cause a diagonal crease across multiple shingles all at once as this one giant shingle bends and then comes back. And you won't even see the damage most of the time because it's been ripped up off the nails. They would call that sheeting. Call it sheeting and you have a chance, because the carriers, for whatever reason, have told all their adjusters that we don't pay for zippering. Of course you do. If it's caused by wind, Mike Gonzalez. Getting more and more State Farm denials for wind claims where the damage is clearly wind. They claim hinge creasing, and even missing tabs are wear and tear. We are getting them overturned, but man, I lose brain cells every day. So that specific issue has to do with how they identify what proximate cause is. So there is an engineering firm called Donen, and they wrote this technical paper on wind. 3 of them, and their third technical paper on wind, they define proximate cause, and they use the definition from liability insurance, which requires there to be some kind of negligence. So it's a ridiculous thing that they do anyway. But basically, they're stating that because wear and tear or improper installation allowed the wind that would normally be an undamaging wind event, meaning the wind wouldn't be strong enough otherwise to cause damage to an otherwise sound shingle, because the roof was old or improperly installed, and that's what allowed that undamaging wind event to cause damage, then they are calling that the cause of loss. They're calling it wear and tear as the cause of loss. The seals were deficient. It's old. It's aged. And that's what allowed the wind to cause the damage. And they're ignoring the fact that the wind did anything. And that's a problem. And so you either have to prove that the wind was involved in some way, or you have to show them that if you're a public adjuster, there's an ensuing loss clause in the policy that allows any ensuing loss to the wear and tear of the improper installation to still be covered, which is in most policies still, by the way. So there's a specific carve out for that specific instance that they're talking about anyway. So it's all bullshit. But ultimately, you got to get them to acknowledge that there is some kind of a wind event that has done something. So wear and tear and improper installation is a condition. The property is in that current condition, and it's being insured against damages caused by covered perils, covered damages caused by covered perils in its current condition. So if they are accepting premiums for a roof that is old, then they are still covering it for damage caused by wind, regardless of whether the roof is old or not. It doesn't matter. That policy is covering that roof up until the point they send out a letter and saying, we will not continue covering your roof for covered damages caused by covered perils unless you replace your roof by this date. Once you send a letter like that and it goes beyond that date, then they don't cover the roof anymore. But up until that point, they're covering the freaking roof. So many issues with that goes on. Obviously, the diagonal carrier engineer reports, a paper or study to provide, may be helpful if you have one. I think I can work on that.
What's that? I've got roof
I think I
denied
can.
by State Farm, valleys are damaged, and ridge vent roof is 3 years old. How do I overturn?
Ridge vent is 3 years old. The valleys are damaged by what?
Damaged by what? Let's say,
we are in a process of creating a bunch of white papers through the Building Experts Institute with my good buddy Chad Williams, the author of the National Academy of Forensic Engineers Standard Methodology on identifying whether or not an asphalt shingle roof is or isn't repairable. That guy. He's also one of the co-authors of the ASCE journal paper that we wrote together using the little shit hail cannon that I built to identify what size hail causes functional damage to asphalt shingles. And guess what? 3/4 inch hail causes functional damage even to architectural shingles. We had 2 different labs attempt this, and both labs had the same results. Haig was wrong. Go figure. Anyway.
Hailstorms here in San Antonio are the
Exactly. Thank you, Mike. Exactly. Did you guys see the new NAFE paper that came out today? There was one that came out today. I'm going to pull up a little bit of information about that real quick. This is actually pretty cool. Something that
the weather
Chad wrote about weather data and its limitations. A lot of times you get like a CoreLogic report, a benchmark report, or something from the carrier or something that you guys bring out, and it is wildly inaccurate. And this paper goes into all the reasons why that kind of data is wildly inaccurate and encourages you to hire someone to take a look at not just the weather data, but also the evidence in the surrounding areas and the evidence on site of any damage that occurred. By the way, definition of damage you should be using. If you are doing any kind of an inspection, you need to identify when something becomes damaged. You have to be able to identify when you know it's not damaged to when it is damaged. And the only way to be able to do that is if you have your own definition of damage that you utilize. If the policy that you're working with has a definition of damage, then you could use that one, but most of the time it doesn't. So what definition of damage should you use? In my opinion, and what we teach at the Building Experts Institute, what I teach in my private trainings that listen to this ball, you should use the definition that the courts widely use across the U.S. Are you ready for it? This is where you take notes. A distinct, demonstrable, detrimental, the 3Ds, physical alteration to covered property or tangible property. Distinct and demonstrable mean roughly the same thing. Distinct means you can point to it, you can identify it, you can separate it out from the surrounding areas. It's obviously right there. The hail was right there. Hail hit this spot right here. The wind caused damage to this shingle right there. It's distinct. It's demonstrable, meaning it's demonstratable. It's measurable in some way. You can actually show it and measure it. You can demonstrate that it's there in some way. And maybe it's not visible at that moment. So hail damage to an asphalt shingle, for example, may cause damage to the mat that fractures it. And it might not be visible because the granules in the asphalt are still attached because it's some kind of a class 3 or class 4 shingle. And the granules in the asphalt stay on there so well. But the mat is still fractured. How do you show that? How do you demonstrate that? How could that possibly be demonstrable? Well, you could send it off to a lab to get desaturated, where they melt the asphalt off, and now you have just the sheet of the fiberglass so you can see where the hail hit it. There's lots of labs that do that kind of a thing too across the U.S. So look for desaturations. So demonstrable. Detrimental means it got worse. It didn't get better. That's a big tenet of something being damaged. It got worse somehow. Doesn't matter how, it just got worse. Physical alteration means it's changed in some way physically. So a distinct, demonstrable, detrimental physical alteration of tangible property or covered property. So that's the definition that I use.
So my cousin Jordan at the
good question here.
He says, "What if a carrier sees a demonstrable impact and refuses to identify it as a something, and just sticks?" Refuses to identify it.
What if carrier sees a demonstrable impact, refuses to identify it as something, and just sticks to?
So
I don't see it, or our position stands, things along those lines. I'm assuming that's where he's going with it. We disagree.
So what if a carrier says that?
Well, I mean, it all comes down to how it is that you're reporting those damages that you're finding. Policyholder has a requirement to prove their loss. If you are helping the policyholder do that by providing an expert report as the expert that you were hired to be, to go out on site to identify the damages, write them an expert report, give your opinion statements, describe the damages that you found, put it all in writing so that they have claimed it, because the carrier only has to investigate what's claimed. And if you haven't helped the policyholder prove their loss, then you're not really doing anything more than just giving an estimate in reality. If you're letting the carrier go out and just do their own investigation without pointing things out to them or putting it in writing so that it's fully claimed, then the policyholder might as well not have hired you to do anything, really. This is something that we teach at Building Experts Institute, something I teach in my private training. It's something that I know that Lee is starting to teach quite a bit. This is proper documentation at the right time is vital. Mm-hmm. So if that's what they're doing to you, it's because you haven't helped the policyholder prove the loss properly by providing them the expert report that you should be writing as a contractor. Or if you're a public adjuster, expert report of your investigation and policy language. Everybody has a role to play in this. I might say that the contractors are working claims because they're working inside of claims. They are involved in that process, and that's real. So, which is all a contractor should be doing. Brendan, what? Are you a contractor or a public adjuster, an attorney, defense counsel?
Or
I'm
maybe
curious.
A ladder assist.
Ladder assist.
What about this Christian?
Contractors have a large role to play, and they're asked a lot of questions, and they overstep their bounds all the time. They do. But they're allowed to know things. State Farm pay for 12 shingles. Tell her if it can't be repaired. She says she has someone who can repair it if I can't. The insurance company says they have someone that can repair it even if you can't. Fantastic. All right, State Farm, send out the contractor that you say can make repairs. We'll meet them out there. And if they're able to make repairs without causing any further harm, then you'll agree to it and you'll allow it. But if they're not able to, then you'll ask State Farm to reconsider. And the policyholder needs to make that statement. As a public adjuster, I've invited the carrier to send out a contractor of their choice many, many times to identify whether or not a roof is or isn't repairable because it takes the bias out. It's not the contractor that's doing the work. It's not me that's performing it because I have a vested interest in the outcome. So I have more bias towards what happens because I'm going to make more money if it isn't repairable. So if they want to send a contractor out of their choice and that contractor who doesn't have any interest in the outcome, they're just going to get paid for that one repair. If they're unable to make a repair without causing further harm, then you just got to document that that's what is occurring because they can't leave the roof in worse condition. You can't make a repair that leaves the roof less compliant than it was before the repair was undertaken. That's part of the IEBC, the International Existing Building Code. So let that happen, but be out there with them and then button it up with a tarp if additional damage occurs. Take photographs like crazy and let the policyholder share your report with State Farm.
Which is what Mike is saying down there at the very bottom. I had a few claims overturned by meeting with the preferred vendor. So there you go. Christian, if you can apply what Mike is doing.
Meeting a preferred vendor to complete a repair test. I actually ask for that all the time. It is an excellent strategy. Sometimes they will say, no, don't do that. We're not going to send someone out. We just disagree. And then that's a very reasonable thing for a policyholder to ask an insurance company to do. It's a very reasonable step forward. If they just say they disagree and you've provided some kind of evidence and the policyholder has provided evidence and they're not providing any evidence to the contrary. So inviting someone out to do it that the carrier sends out that the carrier trusts is a very reasonable step. So when they don't do it and they say no, then the policyholder could easily file a complaint with the Department of Insurance and say, this is what we requested. They said no, we proved it. They didn't. They're just putting their fingers in their ears, holding their breath and saying, we don't care. We don't hear you. But what do you want the resolution of that complaint to be? For them to send out the contractor of their choice to attempt the repairs. And if they're able to make the repairs without causing any further harm, then you'll agree to it.
So there, Jordan is saying, no, we sent an expert report. The inspector called it hail, but the DA stated it, after all, no hail.
Inspector called it hail. So what, like a ladder assist inspector called it hail or your inspector called it hail? We sent an expert report. So the way that you write these things makes a big difference. And there's always going to be carriers that act in bad faith. Or don't look at it or something along those lines. The way that you write these things, he was a ladder assist. So they don't allow the ladder assist to make any kind of statement. Ladder assist has no authority on a claim. Ladder assist might call it hail, but then the desk adjuster disagree. And according to the court system, that appears to be acceptable. I think it's dumb. It's unjust in many ways, but that appears to be an acceptable outcome for a carrier to disagree with a ladder assist that they send out. They can disagree with whatever expert they send out. But if they're not providing any evidence, any basis for their denial, then there's a big problem. I think the majority of the times when they say no hail, it's because they're applying this idea that only functional damage is accepted. Most policies don't have an exclusion for cosmetic damage still, at least for asphalt shingle roofs. And it depends on your area, but the vast majority of policies nationwide don't have that exclusion. And so if you are if you are, as an expert, writing that you found hail damage that is cosmetic damage caused by hail, marring caused by hail for certain insurance companies, whatever you want to say, if that is what your expert opinion is, and you put that in writing and you describe that to them, then they have to comment on the way that you said that. And I got some stuff from I hope to be in your next class. Leo, I hope you're in our next class.
We are going. He's in New Jersey, so.
Oh, you're in Jersey.
Yeah.
So we have a repairability class that will be in Jersey soon. We're planning a Jersey
second week
one.
of August.
Is it on the schedule already, though?
Not yet, but
It'll be
actually, it is, but it's not on the website.
There you go. All right, we got some questions from YouTube. I call on a recorded line an adjuster I'm fighting a claim on, admitting to me that after an attempted repair was sent in, that she said the roof is repairable with proper technique. The roof can be repairable. So they must be saying that you are not performing a proper technique. This is the benefit of being certified in the use of a standardized methodology, because the technique is written step by step. And as long as you perform that same written step by step guideline, then they can't say that you did something improperly. Now, a lot of times when it's companies like State Farm or so, what they're really trying to tell you is that there is no roof snake involved or some other kind of thing. I asked her what the technique was, and she then said, I cannot give advice on that as I'm not experienced in doing repairs. I told her, exactly. And how can you make a coverage decision on this if you don't even know what the proper technique is? And she hung up on me. That's awesome.
I hope she quit.
What do you think about this, and how would you proceed after, out of curiosity? Sending in a report that utilizes the correct methodology and describing the methodology that you use in your report. National Academy of Forensic Engineers, standardized method, written by Chad Williams, published by the National Academy of Forensic Engineers. If you get certified in that, it's especially beneficial. But you don't have to be to utilize the standard. It's a standardized methodology for identifying whether or not the roof is or isn't repairable. It just holds a little bit more weight when you have the certification. Use that methodology, write your report saying this is a methodology you used, and you can actually go to buildingexperts.institute and use our form to fill out what occurred during your repairability assessment and use the standardized report format that spits out from that just for repairability assessments. Send that to the policyholder, let them send that in. And if there is a problem, if they say no, say, all right, insurance company, why don't you send out a contractor of your choice? Clearly, the adjuster isn't able to do anything because they don't know how to do repairs, but they're going to have some kind of a preferred vendor that they could hire to send out to there. And if you have that preferred vendor come out, you meet them on site, you record it, and you see if any additional damages occur. If additional damages occur that are unavoidable by their contractor didn't do it on purpose. That's why they hired that contractor. They trust that contractor. If you do a repair attempt, they might think that you were too aggressive or did something wrong, and you did it wrong on purpose so you can get the full roof replacement out of it and make more money. If I know that's not what you're doing, I know that that's what most of you don't do. I know that there are some of you that do that, though, but most of you don't do that. But they have this idea that you might. So inviting them to send a contractor of their choice out, it's scary. But if you weren't trying to make damage to it, then if you were careful, their contractor is going to damage it too. And then you're going to be back in the same boat, but they're not going to be able to say that it wasn't proven that the roof was or wasn't repairable. So policyholder will be in a much better position. We are certified in it and did it, and it was with State Farm. Yeah, go figure. Did you? And curious. I'm glad you got certified. I'm curious if you used your roof snake in the report at all, because State Farm is really weird about that. Hey, here's Chad himself. I've observed numerous repair attempts, and most contractors are upset and frustrated when damage occurs. Chad's the author of the National Academy of Forensic Engineers methodology, which has a really long name that is just God, Chad, you could have named it something shorter so I could remember the title of the thing. I don't even think you remember it. BR repair assessment training is the shit. Just saying. Thanks, Mike. I feel like I need to pay this.
He's
man.
a PA out of Georgia.
Yes, he is. I've met him at GAPIA several times. Georgia Association of Public Insurance Adjusters.
Cool dude.
All right. All right. Who knows who Brendan Gilliland is?
Which is
Gilliland. Contractors have a role to play in. I want to answer this. What is the UPPA line? I'm not an attorney, first of all, and every state's going to be slightly different. So you should ask an attorney in your state what you are allowed or not allowed to do as a contractor. It is different for every state. All right. And what it is that a public adjuster has to be licensed to be able to do, and what it is that an attorney would have to have an attorney's license in order to be able to do. There are some states that don't even license public adjusters. So state of Alabama, for example, a contractor can do what a contractor can do, but there's no PAs. So you have to go straight to an attorney if you want them to handle policy language. If you are negotiating on behalf of a policyholder, then that's going beyond your scope as a contractor. If you are advising a policyholder on what is in their policy, then you are interpreting a legal contract that goes against your scope as a contractor. That is something that you would have to have a license to be able to do. Can you give your opinion on something? Yeah, as long as you let them know that it's just your opinion and you're not qualified to say something, you have freedom of speech all day long. That's my opinion. You can tell them what your experience has been, what other people have done. You can tell them what is in your policy. You can tell them what you think that policy says, and then invite them to identify what they think their policy says. And that way you're just having a conversation. If you are doing the same amount that a neighbor would do, then I don't really think you're crossing the line. The only difference is if you don't tell them that you're not qualified to do that, then you are crossing the line. I'm not a public adjuster. I'm not an attorney. But in my experience with the claims that I've been involved in, usually this kind of thing is covered for this reason. Maybe your policy is different. I don't know. Maybe you should talk to a public adjuster, an attorney. But what do you think this language means? Do you think the carrier is acting fairly to you? There are ways that you can work with policyholders without crossing the line. I'm involved in an AI product that is for claims handling called Brelly. Brelly, Brelly, AI.brelly.com is an AI tool for handling claims. It will teach you what you should do next and then help you do it in essence. And it is designed for both contractors and public adjusters, or both, and attorneys and policyholders. You can establish what your role is in the claims process, and it will help you perform your role and give you advice. And it can even be used by the policyholder. So you could give access to a policyholder to be able to work their claims for themselves, or give access to a public adjuster on the same claim in order to help you with that side of things. Or all three of you, policyholder, public adjuster, contractor, all together on the same claim using the same AI system that helps you identify what to do next. For each of you, it is a brilliant system. If you're a contractor interested in that, here, I'll put a banner up for that one just for the hell of it.
So, can you clarify what can actually be appraised?
You can get a demo there. aitools.brelly.com/AI map. What can be appraised, that is different on every state too, but for the most part. Am I caught up on the comments real quick? They always use a roof snake with their attempted repairs. Every now and then, they're just going to act inappropriately, and there's not much you can do. Carriers are going to have adjusters that are better than others.
So, we have.
So, Troy. All right, so go ahead.
We have ran into some cases where they only want to appraise what has been approved by the insurance.
Yeah. So scope is the idea here. So in some states, scope is appraisable, and in some states, scope is not. In some states, coverage is appraisable. In some states, coverage is not. So let's talk about scope real quick, because I think that's the more common issue. Scope would be either the scope of work, the scope of coverages, the scope of damages, the scope of repairs. It could be many different things. It could be scope mouthwash. We don't really know what they mean by scope because they don't really talk about it properly to us. So it depends on your state and how they apply that. But generally, what they're trying to say is if the insurance company hasn't agreed to that to be replaced, then there isn't a difference of amount of loss yet. Amount of loss can mean, I like Steve Batter's language on this, the measure of the claim. So whatever work needs to be performed, this is how much it would cost to bring the policyholder back to pre-loss condition or replace the damage with new and bring them to a better than pre-loss condition, but with an RCV policy. So the scope of damages determines the scope of repairs, which determines how much money it's going to cost to make the repairs. And the amount of money it would cost to make those repairs is the amount of loss. And so if you're a state that can only appraise the amount of loss and doesn't appraise scope or doesn't appraise coverages, then only what the carrier has agreed to as far as scope of work is going to be would be appraisable. So the state of Georgia, as an example, through a case called Lamb versus Allstate. I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice. But through that case, the state has made the determination that scope is not appraisable in the state of Georgia, only amount of losses, at least for the language that was in that Allstate policy. So if you or we disagree on the amount of loss, either party may demand appraisal. If that's the language that you have in your policy, then the amount of loss has to have a disagreement. Have you had a disagreement yet in writing? Can you establish that there is a disagreement? And then whatever the scope of the appraisal is going to be can be set by a memo, can be set by the parties before the appraisal starts. It could be set by a public adjuster, it could be set by the policyholder, it could be set by an attorney. A contractor can give an estimate and can tell you what the scope of repairs should be to bring you back to a pre-loss condition with all arguments necessary to talk about their bid. And they can act as an appraiser. But they can't set the appraisal memo or what is to be appraised because that is working on the claim and effectuating the outcome of the claim. So what can be appraised can be set by this memo. So when they say, all right, we're going to appraise 5 shingles, and that's all, but the replacement of those 5 shingles really leads to the replacement of an entire roof, then the scope of damages of 5 shingles leads to a scope of repair of a full replacement. That is a difference of scope in the state of Georgia, at least. In other states, that wouldn't be a difference of scope because coverage A has been opened for 5 shingles, and now we're just talking about what it takes to replace or repair the dwelling to bring it back to a pre-loss condition. So scope means something different in every state. So this is a state-by-state question. I didn't want to give you a cop-out answer and say it depends. I wanted to explain why it depends. It just depends on your state and how they apply what is or isn't appraisable. So everything's a little bit different, guys. I hope that answered your question. I'm sure I gave you more questions with that, but that is the real answer. How can we get a 36,000 square foot metal building approved in Kentucky with a 1.5 inch hail date in 2022? 2022. Well, what's the suit limitation period is the first question that I have. I don't know that for Kentucky right offhand, so I'm going to do a quick research. Suit limitation period for property insurance claims in Kentucky. I think that's KY.
Which in about
Illinois, filing a lawsuit on property insurance claim is 1 year from the date of loss. So that's very short. 1 year period. Kentucky law generally has a 1 year statute of limitations for property damage claims. A 1 year period begins from the date of loss or damage occurred. The law allows insurance policies to potentially shorten the statute of limitations. You got 1 year. So it's from 2022. Okay, so what that means is, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't owe for the claim. If the policy was in place at that time and the damage occurred while the policy was in place. Or hang on one second. TikTok is getting weird. Just got to fix a puzzle piece real quick. If the policy was in place, then you could file a claim on that. And in many cases, they would still technically owe for it. The problem is that if you are past your suit limitation period, then if they say no or act poorly or just say pound sand, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't file suit any longer. Policyholder would have no ability to hire an attorney for that claim. It'd just be thrown out because you're past the suit limitation period. They might still owe for it, but there's nothing you can do about it. You could potentially file a complaint with the Department of Insurance, but the carrier will say, well, it's past our suit limitation period. We don't owe for it. And the policy or the Department of Insurance isn't going to try to interpret that language. So they're not going to be able to do anything about that. because that is something where it would be the purview of a judge to make some kind of declaratory judgment on whether or not that is how the policy is or isn't to be interpreted. But many times, I'm going to have to get off here in just a minute.
Well, we have 21 minutes before the next Zoom.
Oh, that's right. Many times the carrier might still pay for it, even if you do that. But the problem is your passive suit limited period, your leverage is gone. It's gone, man. It's a rough situation.
Wait for another hailstorm.
When will I be in Georgia next? I want to learn more from you. Well, I do a lot of private trainings. You can always hire me to come in and do private training with your team, or get a group of other companies or teams together and have me come in to do something like that. I do it all the time. So does Lee. You can hire Building Experts Institute to come in as a group as well. I do webinar series every now and then on different things. I don't have a specific date that I'm going to be in Georgia again next, but you can get me there. And I'm only one state away. I live in Nashville, so I'm not too far away from Georgia. Most of my career was in Georgia. I understand that state probably better than any other. But if you're interested in talking to me about doing private training, just go to my website, listentothisbull.com, and you can hire me for consultation on individual claims there. You can hire Listen to This Bull to do a peer review on an expert report. I could go through your claim, help you strategize something, and then you can book me for some time to talk about doing a potential private training. We can get on a Zoom call and talk about what that looks like and what that would cost and when we could do it, all that kind of stuff. Waiting for another hailstorm is not the answer.
So I will be in.
I didn't say that answer, did I?
I did.
You did.
Yeah.
Wait for another hailstorm. Well, if there's new damages from another hailstorm, you can file a claim on new damages.
You know, I actually did. A lady called me, and she had a roofer go up there, and the roofer found a few shingles that had wear and tear.
Mm-hmm.
I still went ahead and did an entire photo report for her. There was no wind damage, no hail damage, but I still went ahead and did the photo report. So whenever there is a new storm, anything that pops up that's new, I guess we can use the prior inspection to show what was not there instead of, because I also marked on the roof what was wear and tear and not related to that. So, or not related to any type of weather event. But I will be in Atlanta on the 26th.
Okay.
With SRS.
26th of July?
Of July.
Nice.
And for contractors, is it better to send an estimate using the same software insurance you use, Xactimate, or send them I think sending them an invoice?
I don't think that contractors should use Xactimate personally. It's a program that was originally designed for contractors, but it wasn't developed for them over the long term. The long term, it was developed for the Insurance Services Office, ISO, who owns a portion of it. Using the software that they use means that you're going to fall into a lot of the traps that they have in there. I would estimate it the way that you estimate retail work. If you use Xactimate for retail work, then use Xactimate. But if you don't use Xactimate for retail work, then stop. This is what you charge normally. This is your customary fees. It doesn't cost you any more to do a roof when it's insurance or not. This is how much we charge. Here's proof that I've charged this amount per square for this type of roofing across this area for retail work. It makes it much harder for the carrier to say that it's not an appropriate amount of money. And it could just become a bid item in their Xactimate. If you're using a public adjuster, if the public adjuster is involved, they can just take your estimate and put that in their Xactimate as a bid item, and then they can add all the other stuff to it that an adjuster would want to do. I got to meet up with you, Lee. I missed you on the last training and preferred. I'll try to make it to the SRS one. Yeah.
I'll see you there, man.
Lee is it. Oh, we agree on something. Woo! Thanks for busting my balls earlier. I actually like it when people do that sometimes.
So what is he? Did he say what he does?
I don't know if he said. Let me scroll up.
Tell us what you do, man.
Contract. It's all he had a question about that. I have a guess. I'm guessing that he is a public adjuster. That's my guess, but I don't know. I'll look them up later.
So
All right.
here in the next 15 minutes, we are going to be doing, we're going to have Chad on here too.
Yep. We're going to go live for Building Experts Institute. So we're going to get off of this one and go live on Building Experts Institute just to talk about the repairability certification stuff.
Just a nobody with an opinion.
Aren't we all? I kind of like this guy. You got balls, man. I appreciate that. I really do. All right.
Lee, I need to learn from the process for an insurance.
I guess. Of course I did. I'm in your head, man. Arr. I wouldn't mind having a conversation with you a little bit later, though, Brendan, to discuss certain things along those lines, because I want to see how it is that it's being perceived. The words that I use, it is colloquial language. I don't mean exactly what I'm saying, but if I don't say it that way, then the contractors don't understand what the hell I'm saying. So I'd like to get your opinion offline at some point on how that's being perceived by you and your peers, because I'm sure you've talked about that kind of thing before. Because if there's a slight change in the way that I say things that makes a difference, but still is understandable for the audience, then I'm willing to do that. It's not a big deal. I'm not teaching contractors to cross that line. I'm just saying that they're working claims. And words like that sound like I'm teaching them to negotiate a claim. I think you see the difference. I've had a conversation with Napier recently about this and with Steve Badger about this and whatever. Sure. I think even you would see a major difference in your language from 2 to 4 years ago. Well, 2 to 4 years ago, I was trying to get work as a public adjuster.
And that's one thing that I come across as one PA that is totally against the contractor being educated. And
we live in a world where if you don't understand when you're being fed bullshit by the opposing side, then you're getting walked all over. And so as a policyholder, there's not enough PAs in this world. There's not enough public adjusters. I think the public adjuster profession is absolutely vital for policyholders. It'll never go away, in my opinion. It might change a lot because of AI, but it's never going to go away. But there's not enough of them. And so when a policyholder has a question, who do they turn to? They're going to turn to their contractor. They always do. And the contractor doesn't help that situation. But even if it's a retail contractor, they turn to the contractor. And then they go, I don't know, let me see if I can find out. And then they start learning about all this stuff. But there's so much learning curve. Policyholders have no clue what to do if there's a problem. They have no idea. What do they don't even know what a public adjuster is most of the time, unless they live in Florida, maybe Texas. But most of the time, they don't even know what a public adjuster is. They've never even heard of it. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. And there's no real solution to that at all. Not really. So I teach contractors how to do their role in a way that policyholders can have a better shot. But it's their role and what it is that they do. Anyway. People are noticing you shifting direction. But like you said, let's talk offline later. Fair enough. I do have a different direction. I would like to talk to you about that. All right. We got to get off this one and get on the next one. I'll see you guys later.
Go ahead, then that one. I'll keep this one going for a little bit.